He's never going to light up a room with his presence.
Now, maybe that's okay for a while.
But we're kind of done with the Boris Johnson, shtick.
Yeah.
The guy bouncing in with the scruffy hair, cracking jokes, and everyone thinks it's hilarious. It's hilarious right to the point you have a pandemic, and he turned out to be completely useless and ended up having lots of illicit parties while locking everybody else up in their homes. It's that kind of one rule for me, one rule for you mindset is what killed the Tories in the end. And I think that Starmer certainly won't be that. And he will want to deal with things like poverty in this country in a way that the Tories, I think, have neglected. He will want to rise people up rather than kick them down. And I think he's got the right kind of mindset for that. I just worry there's not enough money to pay for this.
Nigel Farage.
I used to get on well with Nigel, but I discovered to my personal cost he's a treacherous little snake.
Ooh, that's rough.
It was rough. And I was disappointed in him. And the very short version is that when he was working for GB News, I was working for Talk TV. We were billed as rival new networks, even though I didn't see it that way, but we were. And he was the figurehead for them. I was the figurehead. So we were kind of rivals. And I was 3 months away from launching my show on the new network here. And he was already on GB News. They were already up and running. And he interviewed Trump, who he knows as well as I do. And I sent him a text message. I still have it. Congratulations on your interview with Donald. I thought it was terrific. Well done. He went, well, thank you. That's very gracious of you. Honor amongst rogues in the world of broadcasting. And then 3 months later, I got an interview with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And I went down with a big team, a lot of money it cost to set everything up there. About to start, when someone comes and said, we have a problem. I said, what's the problem? And they showed me 3 pieces of paper. And on it were all the most critical things I'd said about Trump in the previous year. On air, in columns. And I criticized him a lot about the way he handled the pandemic, about the stolen election claims, about January 6th. I've been pretty critical. But he'd always known I was someone that would praise him if I felt he deserved it and criticize him if he didn't. That's why he made me a celebrity apprentice. I was that. It's my personality. And right in the middle of all these quotes were 2 positive quotes from Nigel Farage, which raised alarm bells with me about where this all may have come from. And sure enough, it later emerged very quickly. Nigel had sent this to him. He'd had dinner with him at Mar-a-Lago 2 days before, heard I was coming, and his response to my graciousness in congratulating him on his interview was to try and sabotage mine. And I only pulled it round by going to see Trump in his office, and he was effing and blinding and shouting and raging at me, understandably, because of the way this had all been edited to make it look like this was all I said about him, which wasn't true. And I thought, wow, what a snake. What a snake to do that when I'd actually gone out of my way to congratulate him on his. And I don't like people that do that. So I thought I knew Nigel Farage quite well, and I was mistaken. I take people exactly as I find them. And I find it very, very difficult to forgive when people do that kind of thing. And he did it very deliberately to sabotage my interview. So, yeah, not a fan.
So what do you think?
And I would also extrapolate that I think that's part of his, to me, part of the smoke and mirrors thing with Farage is he's great at saying, hey, we can do this, 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 and this, and this. And then when it happens, he disappears and it doesn't happen. Brexit. He was the architect of Brexit. And then he just disappeared. He only ran this time for Parliament because I was on BBC's Question Time show with him and kept calling him out for being a bottle job and bottling it and not running. And the audience got on his back and he looked really uncomfortable. 2 days later, he announced he's running. And it's actually been a successful election for him, successful campaign. I think the whole reform thing is smoke and mirrors. I don't think they can deliver any of the pledges and promises they've made. I know they can't. So to me, he's a bit of a straw man. It all sounds great, but he's a bit of a straw man who couldn't possibly deliver on a lot of what he says he can. And on a personal level, I found that he was not to be trusted. So I'm not a fan.
And so what do you think the reform movement's relative popularity indicates for the Conservative Party in the UK?
It indicates the Conservative Party had a complete breakdown in trust with the electorate, particularly with Conservative voters. Farage is a very good communicator. He, by far, the best communicator in British politics right now. He knows how to, hold a crowd. He knows all the right things to say. He knows the points he's going to get applause at. He knows how to sell himself. All those things, he's very, very skilled, far more than most of the other politicians in the country. He will clearly now have a big influence over the Conservative Party going forward. Will Reform end up doing a deal with the Conservatives? Possibly. Will they have to tilt to the right to make that deal happen? Many Conservatives say they should be doing that.
And what do you think a tilt to the right would look like in Great Britain?
Probably like a more old-fashioned Conservative Party. I mean, part of the thing about the Conservative Party hasn't really felt that right-wing. And I don't mean right-wing as a stigma or a badge of dishonor. I just mean that if you go back to the...
Well, net zero is not a Conservative policy, for example.
Exactly. And I think that, go back to Margaret Thatcher, who was a very divisive prime minister in many ways, but that was, she had conservatism pouring through her blood vessels.
Yeah.
I've not felt that with the Conservative Party for many years. They weren't a Conservative Party, really. They were trying to be people pleasers and ended up pleasing nobody. And Margaret Thatcher never even read the newspapers. She would get a report, a one-page report, what was in the papers, and most of the time didn't even bother with that because she believed that newspaper headlines would divert you from doing the right thing. So she would just do what she believed was the right thing and be judged accordingly. And she was a 3-term prime minister.